Live. All right. Good morning, Internet. It's Tuesday, April 7th, and then our next Jupyter meeting. Missing a few people who are at PyCon. And first thing on the agenda is the big split. How are things going?
Good. So we've got everything split out except for oh Lord, my computer's going crazy. We've got everything split out except for HTML and then the common utils, and we've been doing some cleanup of there were a few files that were used in a number of places but didn't really need to be. So that's kind of what the last few days have been, kind of breaking a few of those dependencies so that we don't have to have much in genutils.
Good.
And then one of the questions, so we just got a couple, basically one non-trivial PR, and then a couple smaller PRs on HTML that should either land or admit defeat and be reissued before we can split HTML. But that should, I think we're very close on all those. For genutils, the part of how we do that will depend on what the role of genutils is. And the way I see it is as a gross compromise in order to get the big split done, and a package that should ultimately die. In which case, many of the things that will come out of IPython will probably want to go back in IPython when that project is killed, which would suggest that we copy things out rather than move them out.
Can you repeat that?
So there are some utilities in, for instance, in utils.path that we use in a bunch of places. IPython is still going to need those after the split, and even after genutils is killed, after we've kind of finished cleaning things up. So if we move stuff into genutils that IPython still needs, then we'll need to move them back to IPython after we kill genutils. But if we copy them to genutils, then then IPython can just not use them.
So I just want to understand, is the thought to create a new Jupyter genutils package?
Probably IPython, but yeah.
Okay, so a new genutils package.
Just for the dependencies that are shared that we can't, in a reasonable time frame,
separate,
yeah.
And then in the long term, work on separating them.
Yeah.
And if there are things that we truly can't separate, we just copy them.
Copy them or make them utility like discrete packages. Like one of the big questions is our Py3 compat stuff. You know, there's a reason there's about 5 dozen Python 2 and 3 compatibility libraries, and that's that nobody's exactly satisfies anybody else's, and that's true for us as well.
Yeah.
So we could either try to make patches to 6 or whatever to bring them to add the few missing things. Or make our own compat package, and then there are a few little utilities like in Path. A lot of them would probably be copies, I think, just since they're small enough that they would just copy into the downstream packages and utilities.
I think that sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Did a copy?
Yeah.
I'd probably the one that I would move is Py3 compat, because we know that's going to be something. But the others, like there are some things in utils path and stuff that I think it makes more sense to just copy them and have IPython use less of the genutils than everything else.
Yeah, because I mean, I can't imagine that our big contribution to the world is a small utilities package that we're going to want to maintain forever.
Yeah, and it's a small utilities package that we will accept no additions too.
Exactly.
So
So
it has to be a monotonically decreasing package.
exactly. So with that in mind, that sounds like a pretty reasonable thing to do. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
I'm
then
taking
I think
notes
I
here.
can.
What's that, Brian?
I'm taking notes here.
Yeah.
Then I think I can get started on that shortly. Then one minor organizational question. We have the eventful container traitlets, and it is somewhat ambiguous whether that should go into traitlets or follow widgets, since it is used exclusively by widgets.
Mm-hmm.
A question.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that are widget only in traitlets? There isn't, right?
There's the color. There's the color trait.
Yeah,
That is already in widget. That's not in.
So the cost of this is that in the widgets package we would have to have some kind of traitlets class, and otherwise we wouldn't have to have that.
Yeah. So part of the cool thing about traitlets is you can define all your own traitlets. So I assume the widgets are going to have their own traitlets. Just like so, right now the only one they have is color.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's an HTML color traitlet that's in the widgets package.
Mm-hmm.
It's already there. It's not in the top level widget,
okay.
top level traitlet stuff. So it's just a question of which side of that line does eventful go on?
Mm-hmm.
Can we think of any cases where someone would want to use those eventful containers, but not in a widget context?
Well, it in some ways it's how it seems like container traitlets should work to me. That it triggers the change event.
Yeah.
Getting an echo from somebody. It triggers the change event when you change the container rather than when you replace the container with a different one.
Yeah.
So I can imagine using it in general. We don't currently.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm also a little worried about the stability of it.
yeah.
Like, I think it's very likely that stuff would change over time.
Okay. So yeah, I'm fine. When I talked to Thomas, we've kind of agreed that it should go with widgets, and then I thought about it some more, and I felt that it should go into traitlets. So I'm right down the middle on this one. So I happened to issue the PR when I was on one side. I'm easily swayed to the other.
My vote would be to put it in widgets right now and see what happens. And if it stabilizes over time and we realize that it's useful or that we start wanting it elsewhere and we have this weird side dependency where we end up depending on widgets because we need it or having a copy of it, then we can kind of promote it into traitlets itself. But by putting it in widgets, we give ourselves some freedom right now to be a little bit sloppier and to make mistakes and to explore how the API may or may not evolve. So I would feel more comfortable with that right now. Just for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Just to give ourselves a bit of wiggle room.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Brian, you had a couple of bug reports.
Oh yeah. So the first one is that I've been using Jupyter Hub. We've deployed it here at Cal Poly, and I was doing some work on NB Grader this weekend, and so I actually did development using Jupyter Hub, but never opening Notebook, just using the text editor and the terminal, and it was really productive dog fooding. It wasn't as bad as I initially thought it would be. There's a bunch of other minor bugs that I'll submit, but there's one bad one, and that is that if you just leave a terminal running for a while, it stops becoming responsive. And on the server side, you end up seeing a traceback deep inside Terminato / PyTY process about a bad file descriptor. And the thing that's odd is that if you just reload the terminal page, it reconnects to that terminal and it works fine. But it occasionally the terminal occasionally gets into a state where nothing can kill it, and it does hang. So it like the 90% of the time a page reload works, 10% of the time you actually have to restart your single user server to kill it.
Oh wow!
And
did you ever try? Did you ever try from another terminal issuing a kill-9 into the PID of that process?
No, I guess I've not tried that. It was just easiest in my context to just, you know.
Yeah, you got a button.
Yeah,
and the button, and what you're saying is the button didn't work.
Yeah, the shutdown terminal button in the notebook did not work for sure.
Did not work. Yeah, I'm wondering if issuing a side kill 9 would have worked, just out of curiosity, just to understand kind of where the level of hung process is. But
did a new terminal? Could you open a new terminal?
Oh yeah, and so yeah, I could do that. I am seeing some zombie processes from my class that I can't kill, like even with -9.
And so, do you remember? Are they all of the same type of process? Or are they all terminal processes, or or is it a little random?
I think they're all terminal processes.
Huh.
Part of the other challenge is that when the server starts to raise this bad file descriptor exception, it does so at like hundreds or thousands per minute.
Hmm.
And so it's not.
My guess is something is closed.
Yeah.
And somebody should be checking whether it's closed before trying to use it.
Yeah. And my initial thought is that it was simply the WebSockets timing out, and that may be related to it. But you know, it should be. I mean, I would just ask if other people could leave a terminal open today.
Yeah, I can do that.
And see if you observed it, and we can start to track it down.
I'll do that.
The second issue that I found.
And sorry, Brian, this traceback that you posted in Terminato 13, that traceback is from the actual console where you started the server, right?
Yeah.
You don't see that traceback anywhere in the notebook UI.
No. Yeah, it's just I mean, it's in my Jupyter Hub log file.
And what sort of timescale?
Oh, it's pretty. I would say faster than an hour. It times out.
Okay.
So
I'm starting one, and I'm leaving it running here to see what happens.
So the other thing I discovered is that if you happen to have a terminal-based IPython session running in the terminal when it hangs, it's truly hugged. A page reload will not work.
No, it's so odd.
Yeah. So the other issue is that my students keep entering their email address as their username rather than their username. And it looks like their authentication succeeds and that a single user notebook server gets started under that email address. Like I can look in the Jupyter Hub admin page and see that they have, student@calpoly.edu has started a notebook server. But
so,
then,
wait, so does that mean... I think this should be the question I'm about to ask. Maybe you don't want to ask on the public internet. But I will anyway. If they can do that, that suggests... If it's coming back with that username, that if the username is coming back as their email address, that suggests that anybody with a GitHub account can run on your server.
I'm using PAM off.
Oh.
And the reason it's accepting email addresses is that the PAM off on this server is tied into Active Directory using this commercial enterprise-y thing that our campus has. It works really, really well.
Okay. So there are multiple things that PAM will accept. Okay. And it might be that you want to use a custom PAM.
Either that, or I'm hoping It's either that Pam is raising some weird exception that we're not handling right, or that we have another. There's something else going wrong as it tries to spin up.
My guess is it's actually failing to start the server because
you're getting the server started, right?
Yeah, it looks like I am.
It probably isn't finished. It probably isn't getting into a fully working. Can you connect to it and use it?
Well,
here's my guess. Here's my guess. Let me walk the chain of what I'm thinking, and let's see if it makes sense. This is what I think is happening. Your student, foo@calpoly.edu, has a username on the system, which is foo, but their email address is foo@calpoly. They type in foo@calpoly. Foo@calpoly is understood by this PAM LDAP thing that you guys have, right? And it returns this is okay. But our system, I think our PAM auth module assumes that the thing that goes in, if it's accepted, is the thing that should be used as the username. And that's actually not true. The thing that should be used may be different, right? And so there's an additional step. And so what is happening is the system, because it has privileges, it's starting a server on behalf. It's trying to spin up a server, but now there is no valid home directory for foo@calpoly.edu. There's a piece that's broken in there. So I think what we have to figure out is if the PAM thingy that you have somehow has a way of giving you back their actual Unix account, or if not, you're going to have to write a little custom one that basically has a mapping, and that says if PAM accepts foo@calpoly, it means foo@calpoly does belong here, but now I have to figure out who they map to as a local Unix user, right? Because I think that's the mapping step that's missing.
The mapping is it's trivial. Let's just split on.
Yeah, so you can write a calpoly. I could echo from the bids conference room. You can just subclass PAMAuth and write authenticate that does basically super authenticate, and then so the authenticate method returns the username, which by default is if login succeeds, return the username that they entered. So you can just subclass that and then do username equals super authenticate, and then return username dot split at
0.
Yeah.
And that's probably it. And you'll need to check for none, because that's what failed authentication is. But yeah, that should be a simple thing. I would guess, as Fernando described it, I would guess it is starting the server that's the problem, right? Because the authentication process doesn't involve creating anything. Authentication completes and succeeds, and it's like, okay, we've got a username, we set some cookies, and we're fine. But starting the process does, set UID and all that stuff, and it's presumably set UID or get home or one of those that's sailing.
One of those steps is using something that doesn't make sense at that point.
Yeah.
that name with an email address in it doesn't make sense anymore from the Unix account level, and so something goes wrong.
Yeah. So I would bet the server is not actually starting.
Okay.
That it's somewhere that most of that stuff happens in the pre-exec of the subprocess.
Somewhere it's getting logged. Yeah, it's getting logged as the start of that process.
We can probably also add a regex on the front page, on the front end, that give hints to user whether.
No, well, we can't reasonably do that because in other contexts this is a perfectly valid email address with a perfectly valid username.
No, I think what we should do instead is the local process initializer. What it should do is before it even begins to try doing much in the way of starting anything, it should check. I got a username to start from. Let me double check before I do anything that it actually is valid and fail early.
Well,
right?
and suppose it allegedly does that.
Okay.
It's just probably not working properly because getting these invalid values doesn't come up that often. So it might be checking in a way that the authentication already does, which works fine, but it's something about the subprocess, some detail about the subprocess that doesn't So I just need friends tracebacks, and I can probably figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'll work with you on that.
Yeah, but you probably at least have a path to fix it in the meantime, Brian. Even before we have a bigger fix, it seems like you have an easy solution for now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, Jess.
Actually, that one's mine.
Oh, okay, cool.
Fine.
Yeah. So I spent the weekend hacking on NVGrader and worked with Jess on this quite a bit. And so there's now 3 new commands, but the existing one works differently. There's NVGrader release and NVGrader collect for instructors, and NVGrader fetch and submit for students that basically allow you to release assignments to students that they can then list and grab, and then they can turn them in, and it all integrates with this new NVGrader directory structure we have, and it makes things much easier. I mean, I started using it yesterday in class, and I don't know. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It's designed to run on the same server as Jupyter Hub, and uses a centralized directory hierarchy that has a very carefully chosen set of directory permissions that for each user on the system gives you an inbound and an outbound folder, where the inbound folder others can write to but not read from, and the outbound folder others can read from but not write to. And so it actually, it's not, I mean, I tried to do this with the idea that instructors are just regular users on the system and not super users. So in principle, anyone, even students, could say, oh gosh, I just did something and I want to release it to other people in the class. They could say NVGrader release, and the other students would see that. And so there's more to figure out with it in terms of a more complex deployment like Jess's. But I think it's a good start, and we'll just see how it goes this quarter.
Have you played with a server extension to add a button on the dashboard to submit or collect? Any of those 4 actions?
Yeah, so
we talked a bit. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, Brian and I talked a little bit about that over the weekend. I think we would like to do either something like that, or possibly like just create like a widget that's like a submit or like fetch widget, something like that. But definitely we want to have something like that, especially like for a class like mine where the students aren't using the command line. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about there's also an NVGrader list command, and I was thinking about having these commands have a --JSON mode that returns output as JSON, and then we could wrap that into a set of widgets and then basically just distribute a single notebook to students that has a UI that they can use to see the assignments, the status of the assignments, the submitted times, and manage that. And so, but I don't know. We'll see. I just want to use it for a while and work out the kinks. But yeah, we having a UI would be very, I think, very desirable in the long term. And this is also, originally I was considering using GitHub to do homework submission and distribute course materials. Mm-hmm. And the more I thought about it, it's really the wrong technology. And I think obviously people are doing this. I think the main challenge is that the core assumption of GitHub is that you want to synchronize content. In a classroom setting, you don't. Like you explicitly want to break synchronization because students are doing different work. Even if a student downloads or clones a repo that has lecture notes in it, they're going to start to modify those lecture notes as they play around with it, which pretty much means they can't pull your later lectures without conflicts. And so I actually am using this system to distribute not just assignments, but also daily lectures, everything.
And do the students seem to like, so you've had them like run NBGrader fetch, and that seems to be intuitive for them, or like, how did that go?
So I spent about a half an hour yesterday teaching them how to use NBGrader fetch. They worked their first homework problem in class, and then did NBGrader submit. And I mean, their heads are exploding right now because they're simultaneously learning the Unix terminal and Git and Python. Like the first 2 weeks of this course were really rough. But I think, I mean, so I had people misspelling the name of something, or I mean, all the usual sort of terminal usage problems that you would run into. But it seemed to work really well. I think the big test is going to be, a week from now, when we've gone through a couple more homework cycles. How often are they asking me questions about this? How often? I mean, it may be that all the remaining pain points are for me, not the students. That's also a possibility.
Do you plan on implementing NBGrader pool and an NBGrader rebase?
No, that's the whole point. Is like, I want it to make copies.
Now, I'm surprised. I've always, I totally agree with you on the not wanting to synchronize for submissions. For giving them materials, though, I have used in the past happily kind of one repo, the notion of a repo with class materials that they should consider read-only, because it does make it very easy for them to just keep doing git pull and getting new content.
But then when they want to use that material, they just make literally do copy that into a separate location.
Yeah, sort of assuming that they have to treat it as read-only, because I mean, if not, the reason why that's convenient is because as you make small, like I would be in class making small incremental changes, and even saying, like, literally in the middle of a long lecture, just pushing to git from the lectern, and then having the students do git pull and just get updated content in lecture. And so
that's still preserved for me in the sense that my original content is in a Git repo.
Okay.
And all I do is decide on what I want to push to them and do NBGrader release, and then they can, grab the latest copy, copy.
I don't understand, regardless of what technology is being used, Git or something else. I don't understand how you're avoiding the issue of conflicts. That's not technology specific. Like, if you're updating Notebook 1, right, and you made updates to Notebook 1, which was one of the lecture materials, right, and you have Notebook 1, and in the middle of class you updated it, no matter how you give it to them, if they've made changes to it, one of those is going to conflict, right?
Oh, of course, and that's the same as it would be with a read-only Git repo. Yep.
So do you just push over their changes, or what do you do?
Oh, no, I don't. So when I type NBGrader release, it takes my version and puts it in a central, I'm calling it an exchange directory. And then it's a manual NBGrader fetch for the student to pull that directory into their current working directory. And they could rename the original one they have. They could delete the original one they have. NBGrader fetch won't overwrite their current version.
Okay, so for that it really is no different than using git push and git pull.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for class materials, it doesn't really change anything.
No, it doesn't. It basically is carefully managing the idea of a read-only Git repo.
Yeah. Okay.
Brian, I have a quick question. Are you having them use NBGrader validate?
Yeah.
For their.
I probably will. I didn't have time to cover it yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely will have them do that.
Yeah, I would say that's the one other So like this new system sort of gets around some of the issues that students have asked me about, like, can I see like what I've submitted? Like, can I see how many things I've submitted? And like previously InteGrader hasn't supported that. It's just like you have the last thing that you've submitted and that's it. But the other thing has been like students want to know, like, you know, did I actually like fill out all parts of the problem set and stuff? And InteGrader Validate will catch all that. So I think you probably will have students asking for that too.
Yeah, so I will most definitely have them use that once we get going.
Okay.
And then deployment stuff, been working with John on that. Unfortunately, it's still been pretty painful. We had a situation where Chrome was happily accepting our SSL cert as trusted, but it wasn't fully, and it was causing just bizarre errors that took us a few days to track down, and now they're installed correctly and everything is working fine with that. One of the most painful parts of all of this is the installation of all the IPython Jupyter extra things like kernel specs, custom templates, NB extensions, and it's really painful, and the part of it is that it feels like everything we touch does it completely differently, and it's just painful. I don't know what to say, and I think we still, I mean, obviously at the last dev meeting, we banged our head against the packaging concrete wall, and the wall won. But it just, I don't know what to do about it. But it's that I think was one of the hardest parts of the deployment. And there's a bunch of different issues. I just wanted to mention that.
We can. No, I was going to say one thing that would be. I mean, we probably won't be able to solve all of this now, but you guys should at least take notes of keep a little log of these things, because if nothing else, it'll give us a very concrete set of problems to solve at the end of the semester, probably. I mean, you're going to have to. I mean, right now you guys are in flight, and so you have to patch it up as best you can and hack it up. But I'm sure you'll get it working. It's just going to be annoying, and it's going to feel like a collection of hacks. And then having a list of those so that we can go back. Part of the problem with the packaging discussion is that it tends to be one of those boil the ocean discussions where the scope continues to increase and it never ends, right? And so, but now between what Jess has done and what you guys are doing, we can say, okay, let's try to figure out how do we want to expose kind of extension and installation points for these problems, which are the problems that we have seen in production, right? And that's it.
Yeah.
Because it may help contain some of that creep of that discussion.
Yeah, and I think one of the main issues is that for each of these extension-y things, IPython has some capabilities to help people install those things, like the NB extensions, kernel spec installation, but it's I would say completely random when you grab a package or a kernel that needs to install one of these extra things. Some, but not all, try to wrap IPython's installation machinery to automate the installation of those things, but they often don't wrap it in a complete way that works in all cases. And it basically, I mean, imagine if another packaging system underneath the hood was calling pip, but didn't expose all the options of pip. It's, you would.
Pip already used to have that problem because pip, it has gotten better, but pip in the past wouldn't expose all the options that setup.py took. Because pip is calling setup.py, and this utils has a set of command line flags that it understands, and pip used to not expose all of them. And so there are certain things that were miserable to do with pip precisely because you're like, but you're calling setup.py, I need this flag, and like, how do I get it to it? It was,
Yeah.
And so it's a nasty problem.
Yeah, and so that, and I understand. I mean, I see why kernel authors and package authors are trying to make it easy for users to install these things. That I think is completely, like, we want that, but I think the design we have for all of this is just, I don't know, it's still really painful, and also it means that all these package authors and kernel authors are writing lots of custom code to install these things. Like, everyone keeps rewriting the package installation logic.
Can we have our own command line take a JSON string on the command line to have an easier way to pass options?
What? I don't understand.
Because you don't want to call directly the API. Like, for example, for install NB extension and everything, you have to basically write your own custom code everywhere to pass the right option or not on the command line. If you're not calling from Python.
Yeah.
Do you mean something like having like a JSON file in the current directory where you do like IPython install NB extension or something like that, and it figures out like what files it needs to copy from that JSON file?
Sure, yeah, something like that.
No, I mean, I think the problem is bigger than that
No,
technical. I mean, the problem is that we don't even have a clear design for how these things should work.
We're starting to hit that with installing the extension for JS for Jupyter Drive, where we write custom code even in Python module to have easy way for user to install stuff. And
yeah, no.
version.
What I think we need to do is basically collect, and I don't know, maybe it has to be done sooner rather than later. I don't know, but collect kind of all these use cases. And what I'm imagining is basically we write them all on a wall. Like, we get together and we write every one of those things on a wall, and we try to ask, okay, what is a common solution for all of these problems, and how do we winnow them down gradually into categories? Which ones go with which ones? Okay, these are part of that, and basically we kind of break them down until we can come up with a common design, and then we document that design, because of course people are writing everything because there's no clear explanation of how to do this. There's no documentation on it, so everybody hits it everybody starts in a different place. They read something, they find an example online, whatever file in our code they happen to open first, that's what they start trying to copy, to try to implement their own solution. And so it's no surprise that there's 50 different flavors of this solution with partial reimplementations. But part of the problem is because we ourselves don't yet understand we haven't quite figured out the complete scope of the problem. So it's one of those things where we have to iterate on it based on actual usage. And now that we're starting to get enough of that usage, it's probably time to collect that knowledge in one big board, cluster it, organize it, and then try to design solutions for it. I don't think it's impossible, but it is going to take some patience.
Yeah, and I think I see two paths forward. One would be that the top-level packages that we're installing, whether that be the kernels themselves or that get installed, the kernels themselves or the extensions, don't put those extra resources somewhere else, but there's a way that they can tell us about them.
But that's the same thing.
Well, but
they have to put something somewhere, because that's how they tell us.
Well,
like there's two ways for them to tell us. There's write a file somewhere, and then there's make an environment variable.
We already had this discussion at today's meeting.
Well,
right. That's the only two ways.
I agree that conceptually they're equivalent. There may be, I don't know. So there's that, and then the other is to just turn these extra things into full-blown packages, and I don't know what that means. But where literally when someone wants to install a kernel, they say, some package manager install kernel, some other package manager install kernel spec. And I don't know what those package managers are, but I think Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Weeds of this one right now, because this
Yeah,
one
yeah,
is always a rabbit hole.
yeah,
But
always.
let's not try to solve it right now. But I'm thinking of two options. Maybe SciPy is too late, but SciPy might be a good time to basically have the sprints. I mean, we could have a private sprint. I mean, we don't need, the sprints don't need to be, I mean, it doesn't need to be private, but meaning it may be a good opportunity to work on this together. And if that proves to be too late, I'm thinking of SciPy just because honestly, between now and then, we're so busy with hiring and other things that it may be the first time we can come up for air. And you're teaching anyway. I mean, in the meantime, you guys are going to have to figure this out the hacky way, not the clean way.
We've figured out this installation already. We have the hack stuff.
Yep. And so you have it hacked up. You can take notes on what you did. That's useful, like notes and lessons learned. Jess has her own set of notes and lessons. And then at SciPy, we could see if anybody else has done any of this, collect any more use cases, and then just try to. This could be a good thing for SciPy, and let's have that as a first plan. And if this proves to burn too hot, and we need to try to schedule time for it earlier, we can. But this would not be one of our regular weekly dev meetings. This would have to be a dedicated, either in person or distributed sprint, but where we set up cameras and we have basically 4 hours of boards and discussions and whatnot with it. How does that sound?
Yep.
Okay.
So I actually have to run. I have to get ready for another meeting at 11. But,
okay.
I will catch you all later. Bye-bye.
Okay, I won't be here. I won't be here next week. I'm in Colorado next week, so I won't make the meeting next week. But you guys should continue without me. I'll catch up after.
All right. Bye.
See you, Brian.
Kester, it's
okay, Kester, PyCon.
Yeah, so Google is a sponsor of PyCon, so we have some talks, and I'm going to be demoing Jupyter Drive in a demo place, and a guy called Jeff Snyder, who's Kaya's intern, is going to demo Collaboratory's internal version.
Cool.
Very cool. That's really great. So both you and Jeff and also Kaya are going to be at PyCon?
I don't think Kaya will be at PyCon.
But his intern will.
Yes.
Okay. And you're going to be there as well.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you should definitely also catch up with Thomas and Kyle, who are both there. And you might also want to meet Nathaniel Smith. Nathaniel is one of our recently hired BIDS research faculty. He's also one of the core NumPy developers, and he's also at PyCon. So you might want to. Thomas can introduce you to Nathaniel. He's a great guy. He's one of the NumPy leads, and I'm sure there could be good conversations about the numerical side of things that I know you're also interested in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to say that Jeff's talk would probably be very good for people interested in seeing our internal developments on the UI side.
Yeah. So can you add to the Hackpad a link to the talk so we can promote it and announce it a little bit?
Mm-hmm. And Matthias, did you think it would be possible for me to demo Jupyter Hub with Jupyter Drive or TempNB with Jupyter Drive?
Yes. So if you want TempNB, we have to ask Kyle. But otherwise, if you have your local IPython setup that works with Jupyter Drive, if you just run the Jupyter Hub, it works.
Okay, got it. So I could demo in principle what it would look like to have like a TempNB style thing with Jupyter Drive.
Yeah. The only thing that's changed is the URL scheme, but otherwise, I mean, I've done it locally and it works. I mean, you just start Jupyter Hub. I mean, you have to install Jupyter Drive on each user, but maybe no. I think you install on user space, so you will have to install the extension for each user and login, of course, for each user. But otherwise, it works.
Okay, I'll try it out. Otherwise, just regular Jupyter Drive.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually wanted to ask you guys, by guys I mean Matthias and Kester, kind of any other updates and reports on Jupyter Drive? How is it progressing? Anything that you need help from us? How are things going?
I'm mostly working with TypeScript and rewriting, trying to understand Postgre and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to get the hang of it. I mean, mostly the rendering part, and I wanted to try this week of integrating real-time with phosphor to see how it behaves.
Okay.
But it's really nice to use. Need to get used to typing and compilation error with JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed some of the way we do things like in the notebook structure, but it's just cleaner implementation.
Cleaner. Okay.
For now, I still feel like you had a lot of boilerplate because you have to declare all the types.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to retype all the notebook structure. But most of the time, once you have the types right and the compiler does not complain anymore, it works.
Well, that's the beauty of static typing. It's a curse and a blessing.
But it's a static typing on top of JavaScript, so you cannot do everything that you want to do with typing. Like you cannot say yes, I know that this is this type and it's right. The compiler just won't type it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay. Chris is really helpful.
Well, Chris has been responsive.
Yes.
Great. Okay, good.
Okay,
And
that's great.
Kester, do you have any feedback as well?
Oh yeah, so I pretty much handed all that stuff over to Matthias now. I started off this work with Phosphor, and then at some point Matthias took over that repo, and so yeah, it's been looking good from what I've seen he's been doing. It looks good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, you guys should just let us know if you ever need anything, if there's anything that we can help with.
I think that Min will love TypeScript.
Are you being sarcastic or are you being honest?
Yes, I am.
You're being sarcastic, okay. Well, because I could imagine him liking it in the sense that it is a cleaner language and it does offer some improvements.
Yeah. No, I'm okay. The motion.
Okay. Brian, anything else on PyCon from anyone? None of us. Jess, you're not going, are you? Yeah. Okay. So we don't have anything. Do we have any other updates on PyCon since none of the PyCon people are here?
Everything was closed on Easter, and Thomas almost didn't have dinner. But it's
okay. I'm sure he survived.
Yes, it's not relevant.
I'm sure one evening hunger strike will not kill the guy. And there's always the hotel vending machine. Last one was Brian hired 2 undergrads for the summer. That's good to know. I don't know, John, if you have any other updates on that you want to relay to us since Brian has left.
No. They're like intern undergrad positions.
Cool. Well, it'll be great to have them. We have a couple of Berkeley students who are also interested in collaborating with us, so we'll meet them here. I'll send an email to the local crowd to kind of introduce them to them. So maybe we'll have a little cohort of undergrads who can perhaps collaborate together. Mm-hmm. All right. I think we've gone through the agenda. Are we missing anything? Is there anything else to report? Damian, do you have anything that you want to report? No? Okay. Good to see you. Damian, you're not coming to PyCon, I presume, with Argentina?
No, not PyCon.
Okay. I figured. It's a long flight.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we don't need to extend these meetings beyond. Oh, I'm sorry, Jess. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just wanted to add one really quick thing at the end, which is we got some mid-semester feedback from students in our class, and with the exception of the fact that they have to be online to access the notebook, it's all been positive about the notebook setup. So just wanted to report back on.
That's very good to hear. That's really, really good to hear. I know your blog post has, I think, created a lot of interest in these things. I was at a meeting at Kaggle yesterday, and there were a bunch of people who had already been reading it and who were very interested in it, who had been following it closely, and so I know that there was a lot of interest in that work. But it's good to hear that the feedback is positive.
Yeah.
And yes, the being online is indeed an issue. I mean, on the other hand, honestly, the flip side of that issue is installation hassles for 220 students, and I think that trade-off is worth it.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it for the next time we take the class. At the beginning of the semester, we didn't necessarily know if we'd have all the libraries we needed and stuff because we hadn't finished converting all the assignments. But next time it's taught, we'll know exactly what we need for every assignment. So we can hold an installation session at the beginning for people who want to be able to do that. And I might still do that like at the end of the semester, or at least give people instructions for how to do it. But yeah, so I think you can probably still like give students the option to install it locally if they want to, but for the majority of people, still have to be on the server.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the semester, I would consider that kind of something for advanced students, and because otherwise it's going to be easy to
Maybe like after the first 2 problem sets or something like that.
Yeah, but at the end of the semester, I would definitely try to do something like that, just so that they can go home with sort of leave the class and take all their work with them, and so have a way of basically saying, click on this zip, get your home directory as a big zip file or tarball or whatever, and then here install this. It gives you exactly the same things on your laptop. Unzip that directory, and you can basically continue working on what you were doing during the semester. I think that would be valuable. But it's very good to hear that. Yeah, that makes me very happy. You're doing awesome work there, and I know lots of people are excited about it. So
Thanks.
Keep it up.
Cool.
All right. Well, then goodbye, internet. See you folks all later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.